Hello and welcome to Views on News. I'm Jawad Tehami. As the government is all set to announce the budget for the next fiscal year, today the Finance Minister Mohammad Aurangzeb has presented the Pakistan Economic Survey for the outgoing fiscal year 2023 and 24. This annual report regarding the fiscal year 2023 and 24 draws the map of the progress on the economic front regarding as to what had been the GDP growth, what had been the situation of inflation, trade and investment. It also talks about the progress in key sectors including agriculture, industry and services. Let me bring in some very important excerpts from this very presser by Finance Minister Mohammad Aurangzeb. While launching this particular survey, he has said that the robust growth of 6.25% in the agriculture sector is the highest in the last 19 years, which is a major hallmark. He has also said this growth has been mainly driven by 16.82% growth in important crops such as wheat, rice and cotton. Also talking about the industrial sector, he said it posted a positive growth of 1.21%. Also, the Finance Minister has added that inflation has come down to 11.8% and there has been an unprecedented increase of 30% in revenue collection. The Finance Minister has also talked about the current account deficit and he has also predicted it will remain around $6 billion this year. The Finance Minister has also talked about the foreign exchange reserves which have reached about $9 billion, which are sufficient for 2 months of imports. He said the markets are also responding positively as a result of macroeconomic stability. As per this particular economic survey of Pakistan, the per capita income increased by $129 to $1,680 as compared to $1,551 of the last year on the account of increase in economic activity and appreciation in the exchange rate. Also, similarly, the saving to GDP ratio has been recorded at 13% this fiscal year compared to 13.2% of the last year. Is also talked about as to the progress in the mining and the mineral sector. We'll also be talking about that also. It's talked about the remittances which grew by 3.5% during the first 10 months of the current fiscal year and were recorded at $23.8 billion as against $23 billion last year. The foreign direct investment inflow has been increased by 8.1% to $1.5 billion. Also, the Finance Minister has also talked about the negotiations carried out with the IMF. As far as those negotiations are concerned, he has said that we have had constructive and positive dialogue with the international lender and these are progressing well. Also, he has talked about the repayment, saying the repayment will not be a challenge once IMF program is finalized as we are entering the next fiscal year. All these important stats and these statements coming from the Finance Minister as all eyes in the country are set on what sort of a budget is going to be announced tomorrow by the federal government. To discuss all these aspects, we are honored to have been joined in the studio by Dr. Nasir Iqbal. He is Head Macro Policy Lab, Pakistan Institute of Development Economics. Dr. Iqbal, thank you very much for your time, for being with us on the show tonight. We really appreciate that. Also in the studio, we are honored to have been joined by Mr. Abdul, he is Senior Economist. Mr. Jaleel, thank you very much for your time, for being with us on the show tonight. We really appreciate that. Now, by looking at the Pakistan Economic Survey, let's talk about the significant growth that has been posted by agriculture. The highest in 19 years, it is a hallmark. Of course, it is unprecedented. What's your understanding? What was the key driving factor as far as this particular significant growth in agriculture sector is concerned?
Thank you so much for highlighting the very important component of our GDP. That's what we call the agriculture sector. So this year, it's blessing for all of us that the agriculture sector is contributing very high, and especially as you mentioned, the growth rate of agriculture is the main factor in putting this 2.3% GDP growth rate. And when we talk about the other sectors, so they do have some sort of positive growth, but it's not as much as high as compared to the GDP growth in terms of agriculture sector. So this is very like a good news for all of us, because over the last few years we also struggling with the agriculture sector due to various climatic issues. Sometimes it's floods, sometimes it's other natural disasters that led to a significant decline in agriculture sector. But this time it was all good for agriculture sector.
It was good. Why it was good? Why such a significant growth has been posted in this particular sector? Specifically talking about that 16.82% growth in important crops such as wheat, rice, and cotton as well. So, what was the key reason behind such a significant growth in this particular sector?
Over the period of time, we were struggling with the agriculture sector due to climatic issues. So this year, fortunately, we have like a good weather in terms of we have a decent rain, though it's not in the sense good in terms of the overall pattern of the weather, but this, like we can say that in terms of the investment in the agriculture sector, keeping in view the previous year, the people rely on agriculture sector in terms of increasing their productivity, in terms of increasing the overall production area. So all these factors contributed toward the very positive growth rate of this agriculture. So, but when we talk about how much it contribute in terms of the policies, so the agriculture sector is like, as you know, that like 95% is operated by the very small farmer. So they rely on the subsidized fertilizer and the other stuff, and the government to some extent help them in terms of meeting these type of their input needs. Though on the other hand, the cost of electricity was high, but the overall we can say that the agriculture sector this time is linked with the climate issue, and also in terms of the focus, because over the last 1 year SIFC is also focusing on the agriculture sector and also increasing the productivity of the sector, and this time it gives us the result. So we have to continue to make investment in this sector and make it more productive and make it more competitive if we really have to compete with the rest of the country.
Right. Mr. Abdul Jaleel, what's your understanding as to this significant growth that has been posted by agriculture sector?
Agriculture sector
main
is the
driver of the economic growth this time around.
It's a good question, and it's an indicator of many facts. Number one fact which I believe is that the real estate management, which was drawing a huge investment in the country over the last 2-3 decades, has stopped now. And although there is a recession in the real estate market, but the capital which previously used to be invested in real estate has been diverted towards certain positive end. Agriculture is one of the fields where the people are now making investment, and I can see a lot of farms have developed, you know, orchard farms, even olive farms. If you go over the fruit farms, they have made, you can see now they are coming up almost in every cultivatable place of the country or in the district of the country. This is a good sign as well. Secondly, I will say that the government have taken some step, for example, grant of subsidy and financial input which was forwarded for the acquisition of the agriculture implement has done well. Then the seed supply, although there are some people who make some competition, who launch some, who have got some complaint against the supply of the low quality seed. But I think so by and large the government has been able to overcome this limitation as well. Then another factor which remains to be a big challenge for the agriculture sector is the connectivity with the international market and domestic market. This is the area where the government have to now do some work.
Connectivity with the markets, both
international
market and domestic
yes.
also. So quite a number of important, significant points that you have mentioned regarding the diversion of the capital towards agriculture from the real estate, also government taking steps and connectivity that is required, that could be a challenge. But already when we talk about agriculture, as already mentioned by Dr. Iqbal, that agriculture happens to be one of the priority areas as far as
yes.
Special Investment Facilitation Council is concerned. We know in the second phase of the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, agriculture is going to be one of the key sectors that is going to be focused upon and collaborated upon by the two sides, China and Pakistan. So this time, the kind of significant growth posted by agriculture speaks volumes about the potential, the prospect of this particular sector in contributing to overall economic growth here in Pakistan. So with these right steps already taken in the form of Green Pakistan Initiative and under the SIFC, also the priority area in CPAC. Dr. Iqbal, what needs to be done further in order to tap that very potential and the dividend which is associated with it?
I think this is a very important question. So, what we believe that if we really want to make this agriculture as a full-fledged industry and we really want to harness the potential of this agriculture sector, we have to consider and we have to allow to develop markets within the agriculture sector. For example, as we required a seed market, we required a storage market, we required a transportation market. So, these are all kind of markets are missing in our agriculture sector. So, as you highlighted that the China is helping us in terms of modernizing our agriculture sector. So, as a way forward, to me, if we can get some sort of skills and some sort of infrastructure to place and we allow the private sector to make investment in the agriculture sector. So, previously there was no investment by the private sector in the agriculture. Why? Because there is a lot of intervention by the government in terms of either price setting, in terms of either procurement, in terms of either storage capacity. So, if we allow private sector, if we modernize the agriculture sector, there is a massive potential, because there is a significant amount of labor engaged in this sector. So, we have to improve their skill set. It will help not only to increase employment, but also help to reduce poverty and vulnerability. That is one of the key concerns if we are looking for as a way forward. So, the agriculture, if we think the agriculture is the main sector as a way forward, we have to consider this as a market. We have to allow the private sector to make investment. We should abolish the role of government, especially in terms of price setting, in terms of procurement like wheat. This time the wheat crisis, why it was a wheat crisis? Because government didn't procure. So, we have to allow private sector.
You already talked about the cost of electricity, right? So, there has been a drive of solarization in the agriculture sector also. What crucial role do you think it can actually play as far as the overall growth of agriculture sector is concerned? I'll come back to you, take your detailed understanding. Mr. Abdul Jaleel, I'll come back to you also to have your understanding as to what are the prospects of what needs to be done as far as the policy and implementation of it, specifically getting and focusing on getting the dividend from agriculture sector is concerned. For now, we are honored to have been joined by Dr. Vaqar Ahmed. He is Joint Executive Director, Sustainable Development Policy Institute. Dr. Ahmed, thank you very much for your time for being with us on the show tonight, specifically talking about in the light of the Pakistan Economic Survey that has been presented today by the Finance Minister, the growth posted by agriculture sector, how significant a contribution it has played, and what are the prospects in future as far as this sector is concerned?
Thank you very much for having me. I think it's heartening to note that the agriculture sector has been helpful in posting an overall positive growth rate, providing us industries. However, you note.
Dr. Vaqar Ahmed, unfortunately, there is a little bit of distortion, and unfortunately, we can't hear you properly. We'll try to reconnect with you and we'll come back to you with this particular understanding of yours, that what were the key drivers that actually led to have such a significant growth posted as far as the agriculture sector is concerned. Mr. Abdul Jaleel, a number of recommendations have been made by Dr. Iqbal as to how to take out the maximum dividend out of this particular agriculture sector, given the fact there's been so much focus of the authorities here in Pakistan. What are your recommendations?
Yeah, our agriculture sector, as you know, it plays very important role in the development of the nation, and it constitutes almost 22 to 23% of the GDP as well. And at one point of a time, Pakistan used to be known as a homeland of the agriculture, and it was the admitted fact that this is the area of a big advantage for Pakistan, which should be exploited fully. Unfortunately, it has not been done under a well-organized policy as well. And we know all over if you see the agriculture development all over the world, even the developing country, agriculture system, agriculture farming is deeply dependent upon the subsidy which is given by the respective government, even United States of America and in Western Europe as well, because this is an area in which in which without sponsorship you cannot give a satisfactory result. So we should take it for granted that we will have to the state will have to patronize continuously the sector of the agriculture. If you compare it with the India has adopted a very well protected policy to increase their agriculture production in their country.
So you're of the view that the government, the authorities have to patronize this one.
It is very important.
So does it go against what you have already said, that abolishing the role of the government? Dr. Iqbal, what's your?
Yeah,
I mean,
so.
is it altogether different understanding?
When I say that it has to be patronized through subsidy by providing subsidized availability of electricity. This is very important. They should be the farmer, the middle status farmer, the low income farmer. They have to be sponsored by the state through concessional policy.
Okay.
Because they cannot provide you the result if you try to, if you put them in a competitive environment. Right. They will not be able to give you the result accordingly. In India, electricity there is a concessional treatment for the farmer as far as electricity is concerned.
Electricity is concerned, a very important point. I'll come back to you. We are reconnected, Dr. Vaqar Ahmed. Dr. Vaqar, I hope that you can hear me right now, and I hope that there doesn't happen to be a distortion this time around when we talk to you. Please go ahead with completing your thought as to what's your understanding of this significant growth that has been posted as far as the agriculture sector for the outgoing fiscal year 2023 and 24 is concerned.
Thank you very much. I think, as I was saying, agriculture has certainly posted a strong economic performance this year, which has also allowed us to remain in a positive overall GDP zone. And of course, this growth in agriculture has also helped many of the manufacturing industries, most notably the food processing industry, whose exports have also increased. I think going forward, it's important to maintain the momentum in the agriculture sector. As we see, there's no room for complacency. Planning Commission has provided targets for the next year agriculture, in which they are asking to exercise care given, of course, the volatile weather conditions, the situation, of course, with regards to timely availability of the farm credit available to farmers, as well as other inputs. So if you look at the next year's targeted growth rate of agriculture, there's no room for complacency. The next year's targeted growth rate is set around 2%. And I think this sort of gives a picture that this sector is still facing a lot of problems which require answers from the policy and regulatory realm.
So to keep that momentum going, what are your recommendations in order to keep that up and achieve quite a considerable growth in future for the next year in particular also? First
and foremost, we really need to have a regulatory impact assessment of this sector. We need to assess how to reduce the cost of doing business in this sector. We tend to forget, and we often tend to think that a farm sector is getting a lot of subsidies. And in saying so, we ignore how the cost of doing business in agriculture and in processed agriculture has increased over the years. And this is why I think we have advocated that an updated regulatory impact assessment is required. Second, there have been many experiments with regards to tax policy in this sector. It's important that whatever tax policy farm sector is subjected to, we should stick to it over the medium to longer term, so that there's certainty. And who's asking for this? Those who want to invest in Pakistan's corporate agriculture sector, they are asking for a longer-term tax policy, or at least certainty around that tax policy going forward.
Right. So when we talk about the growth as per the Pakistan Economic Survey in the industrial sectors, posted a positive growth of 1.21%. How do you look at that?
Yes, I think this is where a lot of effort still has to be done. The peer economies in South Asia have posted a much more stronger growth rate, north of 5% and above, So I think that gives us time for, or at least moment of reflection, that we are still far below the peer economies in this sector. And I think part of the reason is the energy sector, given the fact that while not only this sector is faced with rising tariffs, energy tariffs, but also uncertainty around the supply as well. Second, again, as I was suggesting earlier, that there has been a removal of tax exemptions in most of our manufacturing industries, and it will take time for them to adjust gradually. Thirdly, we have a lot of export incentives to many of our manufacturing industries, and a large number of these export incentives are being rolled back now as per our commitment with the fund. So it is going to take time for our industry to become competitive.
Right. So, Dr. Vaqar Ahmed, talking specifically about inflation, we saw back in May 2023, it touched the number of 38%. In May this year, it has significantly reduced to 11.8% as per the Pakistan Economic Survey. This survey goes on to say, because of what the coordinated policy response, including the combined impact of the monetary tightening, fiscal consolidation, smooth supplies of the food items, favorable global commodity prices, and base effect, they all contributed to the reduction to such a considerable level, 11.8% as for the May month is concerned. Your understanding regarding the combination of all these factors in reducing the inflation, and also we know that monetary policy rate has also been reduced 150 points.
Yes. So I think a lot has been achieved on the inflation front. And certainly it's been a mixture of policy and administrative measures, as you just narrated. However, two things need to be noted here. One is that a large part of inflation has been brought down after demand destruction. What we mean is that we had to comply with a low growth environment where economic expansion wasn't taking place, and hence, of course, the economy slowed down and inflation came down. Now, you cannot stick to a policy of low growth equilibrium over the longer term. Eventually, Pakistan has to embrace economic growth. And, of course, going forward, one has to think and then, of course, plan that how will inflation be sort of managed with a growing economy or needs of a growing economy. That's one. Second, of course, while policy and administrative measures can take you some mile, what is still required to keep inflation down is to raise productivity in agriculture and manufacturing. So currently, inflation is still volatile with respect to prices of imported goods, with respect to exchange rate. If we want these things to impact us on a lesser scale, we will have to increase productivity or supply of our own domestically produced goods and services.
Right. Now let's talk about the total revenues. Total revenues grew by 41% to 9,780.4 billion in July-March fiscal 2024 against 6,938.2 billion dollars. The revenue collections around 30% increase. How important was that? And what key measures do you associate with such a considerable increase in percentage of revenue collection?
Yes. So I think in order to comply with the fund's requirement, SDPI as well as the provincial revenue authorities have really scaled up their efforts. They have gone after many of the next sectors. Base broadening efforts are also underway. I think the main difficulty, even after posting such large increase in revenue, the main difficulty is that inflation is still high, which means that inflation-adjusted revenue increase is still in the vicinity of 3% or 4%, which is why, of course, IMF is asking to further expand the tax effort, and they believe that the real growth or inflation-adjusted growth in taxes should be much higher. Now, we do know that FBR can do this through the already initiated digitization and automation measures, and there is potential of reducing tax evasion going forward, potential of digitizing the wholesale and retail trade sector's incomes, there's potential of digitizing agriculture sector incomes. And answer lies in the automation digitization, because only it will allow you to audit the incomes that are still under the tax net.
One last important point. What are your expectations as far as a new, longer and larger program of the extended fund facility with the IMF is concerned, as we have seen that fiscal discipline and the kind of tough measures brought in by the authorities, both by the caretaker government also during that tenure of the standby arrangement, and also later on this government. Where do you see, we have seen the positive statements coming from both sides after the IMF delegation, the team was here led by its mission chief Nathan Porter here. Most recently, we have seen the statement coming from the Director of Communications, Jolie Kozak, regarding as to considerable reach as far as the negotiation between the two sides is concerned. How hopeful are you, and how crucial a longer and larger EFF is for Pakistan at this point in time?
Yes, so I'm actually very optimistic, given that Pakistan has shown in the past few months, even during an election year, stay the course of fiscal discipline. And I think had this not been the case, IMF would not have been engaging with us in talks about the next program. So it's heartening to see program is on and negotiations are being done for the next program in a manner in which Pakistan is being seen as a country which has complied with the kind of fiscal discipline, monetary discipline, which was promised with the fund and the other lenders. I think going forward, no other path but to remain on the promised structural reforms with the fund and the other lenders. I think this is what the friends of Pakistan like China, Saudi Arabia and UAE, who want to invest this year and the next year in Pakistan, want to see. They want to see that stability return. They want a stable exchange rate environment, interest rates coming down as we saw yesterday. So all in all, I think economic stability is going to pay for economic growth, which in turn attracts foreign direct investment in the coming days and eventually also gives boosts to government revenues.
Right. Dr. Vaqar Ahmed, the Executive Director at Sustainable Development Policy Institute. Thank you very much for taking time out for Views on News tonight. Really appreciate that. Dr. Iqbal, let's go back to that very aspect that we were discussing as far as agriculture sector is concerned. Now, there are two important aspects I would like you to shed a little bit more light on. As far as the cost of electricity, already mentioned by Mr. Abdul Jaleel as the case of India, incentivizing and also facilitating the farmers as far as the supply of electricity is concerned. How crucial and important role the solarization drive as far as the agriculture sector is concerned can play in that regard in order to meet that energy demand as much as it is required there?
I think there is no denial on the cost of inputs. You know, unfortunately, there is no further space with the government to further reduce the tariff in the electricity sector. Either they have to increase the tariff to meet the circular debt issue. So there is a limitation on that. As an alternative, solarization is really a good opportunity, and we have to promote that solarization. But the real issue with the agriculture sector, even with the other sector, is the role of government, the footprint of the government. So on the one hand, we are talking about the competitiveness, we are talking about the increase in the export and something like that. And what are the solutions that we really, when we say that we have to move forward, we have to maintain this healthy growth rate in the agriculture sector. How we can do that? Of course, the input cost is one component. It's not the entire sector. It's the one component. We have to rationalize the input cost. But the real issue is with the real markets. We didn't allow to develop markets. I'll give you the one example. The government heavily intervened in the wheat market, give a wheat subsidy, wheat prices, but there is no such intervention in the corn market, in the corn production. Look at the per capita yield, per acre yield of these two crops. You can find the difference. That slowly only link with the private sector. They are making investment, they are earning a lot of money, and they know how to make investment, how to get the dividend, how to get the profit out of this business.
So when Mr. Abdul Jaleel talks about patronizing, the government patronizing this particular sector, subsidizing, incentivizing the farmer community, What sense do you make out of it?
You know, what kind of subsidy we are giving? We are subsidizing the fertilizer sector, not the agriculture sector. The fertilizer, we are giving a subsidy to the fertilizer company, and they are enjoying a high profit. But what about the farmer? They are getting loan at very high price, at the very high cost, and to some extent they are relying on the agriculture machinery that they are buying from the open market, where they are paying a very high price due to inflation, due to other facts. So if we really have to make the role of government should be to facilitate the private sector and allow them to make investment in this in agriculture. Agriculture is not about the
facilitating the private sector.
Yeah, agriculture is not about the growing like a crop. It's all about the packaging. It's all about the supplying. It's all about the maintaining the quality. It's all about the adding the value addition. You know, what the international market demanded for us, they are demanding a high quality output in terms of agriculture. So either we are, where is our competitor in terms of supplying vegetable in the global market? We are not supplying. We are not supplying any other production from the agri. If we are supplying the rice or the like sugar, so this is even the there is no value addition. But if we process it, if we can come up with the value addition, then probably look into the India, all kind of the agri products in the global market they are supplying by packaging. So we have to facilitate packaging industry. We have to facilitate storage industry. There is no storage field in the country. So if we allow investment in these sectors, you know, the China's the model is to make investment in this sector is not only in the production sector, but in terms of the all other supply chain of this whole agriculture sector. The one of the key idea behind this SIFC is the corporatization of this whole sector. So if we have to corporatize this sector, then we allow the private sector. We allow the private sector to make investment. They can procure. They can if we allow them to install any mill, flour mill in anywhere in the country, they will be allowed. Currently, we have a lot of restriction in terms of allowing them to establish an industry.
If you allow me, let me take the view of Mr. Abdul Jaleel regarding as to what your recommendations been in this particular day. Mr. Abdul Jaleel, please.
The views expressed by my colleague, they are quite worth noting, and I personally believe that the government needs to revamp and relaunch its agriculture policy in order to accommodate the demands of the agricultures and the farmer community. For example, number one, as earlier I have said, that there are certain services which have to be provided on concessional basis, like supply of wheat and electricity and etc. Number two is the warehousing and storage facility. It's very, very important. The surplus goods of the agriculturists and the farmers, they are wasted. They are perishable goods, as you most of them. They have to be preserved properly under protective condition, and then they have to be transported out of country or within the market. In this way, we have to develop a international and a domestic chain supply system that has to be reactivated. In this respect, the government will have to make some investment as well. A lot of work has been done during 2003-4-5, and a lot of paper has been written on and recommendation made in PRSP. Strategic paper written on poverty reduction. And I think we should try to pay some attention to it. And number two, mechanization of agriculture system.
So to have
and that's very important. And mechanization will involve a full-fledged human resource development policy. A lot depends upon the human resource development policy. You can increase the potential of agriculture area, agriculture sector, as well as their farmer by developing a high-class human resource policy, which I would say is an area not received befitting attention so far.
Okay, so you already talked in your earlier take about connecting the domestic and international markets. Now you're talking about to have the better supply chain as far as exporting this particular agriculture produce to the markets is concerned. Now, how to have that better connectivity? We know that CPAC one of the connectivity projects. The agriculture is going to be one of the priority areas as far as the second phase of the CPAC is concerned. What are your recommendations regarding as to enhancing that connectivity to both the domestic and the international markets?
The warehousing facility and then the storage facilities, and they are perishable goods. Air-conditioned environment has to be provided to them. This is very important. And then in this respect, I will say airline will have to be involved in it. For example, Pakistani mango is unique in the world. And it has got it's a big market in the European and American continent. But unfortunately, we have failed to tap this, this area as well, simply because of I would say, low connectivity, and the farmer there and the grower there, they are compelled to either, sell them in their market at a very, very cheap price, which does not in fact compensate them properly. And that is one reason that in case of a loss, they will try to avoid cultivation of such, cultivation of fruit or a vegetable or other agriculture produce as well. And then there is another factor which is very important, which has to be tackled: the growing urbanization. Agricultural land is being consumed by the real estate manager for development of the colony. The government has to pay very serious attention towards it.
Right to Dr. Iqbal. So let's move on to a next aspect as far as the revenue collection is concerned. During the outgoing fiscal year, there's been considerable improvement as far as the tax revenues are concerned, posted growth of 29.3%, 7.26 trillion rupees as per this Pakistan's economic survey. Specifically talking about the non-tax revenues, posted 90.7% growth, 2.52 trillion rupees. Isn't huge, considerable percentage that has been posted here?
Yeah, of course, if we look into the inflation of the last year, so keeping that in view, of course, it's a very decent number. So if we adjusted with the inflation, then you come up with a very different picture. But of course, the mini budget and the lot of revision in the tax rate would definitely give some sort of dividend in terms of as a way forward. So what would be the way forward for the next year? So yesterday, the PIDE with the help of so many experts presented a tax reform proposal for the government. There are news that the government is looking at some sort of like
expanding the tax base by bringing in the undocumented sectors into it.
Yeah, so no, but what our proposal basically look into the.
So what are the main contours of that?
Yeah, that's what I have to give me a couple of minutes. I will explain.
Please go ahead.
The key objective of our proposal is that we have to increase growth and investment. So if these are the two objectives, then what kind of taxation system that help us to increase growth, to allow investment. For that, we propose lot of reforms. First reform that we propose, that we have to reduce the GST at least from 18 to 70%, but the government on the other hand thinking about increasing the GST. So that was the first component. The second component, if we look into the lot of tax collection at the import level, that discourage regionalization, that discourage trade. So you are putting in a lot of regulatory duty, lot of excise and custom duties, so many things at the import level. It's roughly around 50% of the total amount, while comparing with the rest of the world, it's around 5%. So we have to rationalize.
Okay.
The second component is tax on the salaried people. So we propose to increase the minimum threshold level to allow the common people to live their decent life, but on the other hand, government thinking differently. We also propose some sort of reduction in the tax rate. Our proposal also push for the corporatization rather than the individual people look into the as a taxpayer. We also suggested to abolish this differential treatment with the filer versus non-filer. If I'm I have to pay the tax, I have to pay. There is no concession. Secondly, the last component that we are looking in this, we have to rationalize the tariff structure. We are proposing a different slab structure where you can give a confidence to trader as well as the other people.
Right.
The last point that I really want to focus in this whole, the administrative part of this whole exercise. So we have to digitize the entire system. We have to put a restriction on
that is already underway.
Yeah,
so
we have to put a
digitalization of
restriction on the
looking at
direct
these,
interface
these recommendations, for example, reduction of the GST from 18 to 70%, tax collection at the import. You're also in the favor of reducing also that one. Talking about the tax on the salaried people, you're also suggesting to increase the threshold.
Yes.
I mean, of course, reduction in that also, that
Yeah.
means in the other way around. Reduction in the tax rate also, abolish differential treatment between the filers and non-filers as well. Also rationalizing the tariff structure. With all these reductions, where are you going to get your revenues collected from?
So we believe,
if you're going to reduce everything,
that's what
where is the revenue going to come from?
The revenue come from the economic activities. So all these reduction would allow you to expand your economic activity. You know that this reduction in inflation and this tax is come through the contraction of the economy. So all these measures would allow you two things. One, to expand your economic activity, to allow more investment. So we give the calculation. It's not about these that we are putting these like these suggestions without any analysis. We put all the analysis behind these things, and we believe if our proposal is accepted and implemented in a true spirit and with administrative reform, we can achieve this target with these
right, Abdul Jaleel, what is your understanding? Do you agree with all these reductions which have been suggested by this particular research carried out at the Pakistan Institute of Development Economics with Dr. Iqbal saying so many leading economists on board, all these reductions, where the authorities are going to get the revenue collection from?
I am from Income Tax Department. I have served for many years there, capacity. And whatever the suggestion Dr. Saab has given, they are quite valid. And I personally believe, and this is the taxpayer psychology, the taxpayer will not pay you the tax if he is not convinced that it is a just tax. Trust, and if you try to impose excessive taxation upon him, the trust between the state and the taxpayer will finish. And then he will resort to tax avoidance and tax evasion.
Okay, so what is that yardstick that a common person like me or somebody who is not well acquainted with that very difficulties of understanding that economy or taxation, right? So what's that yardstick by which I will come to know that this particular tax which is being imposed on me is justified or not?
Number one, I tell you, procedure must be very simple.
Yeah.
Complicated procedure create a lot of liability for the taxpayer, and they want to avoid it. Neither they have a time nor they have resources. And right, number two, the complicated procedure I have seen will bring a huge price to the taxpayer. They will have to engage highly qualified lawyers and a chartered accountant and pay a lot of money to them. And then number two, the transparency is affected as a result of these complicated procedures. This is very, very important. Number two, so cost of paying tax has to be reduced as well. Number three, and number four, you give the universal self-assessment scheme as an experiment has become a successful reality all over the world. You know, the government
universal assessment scheme, how does it actually work?
I mean, whatever you have declared, the government will accept it. But meanwhile, after every 5 years, your return will be processed, it will be examined, and if they find that you have made some accretion in your asset, in income, then it can be selected for total audit.
Point well taken. Dr. Iqbal, unfortunately, we're short of time. I want your quick, short comment regarding as to your hopes regarding, we've seen the statements coming from both the Pakistani authorities as well as the IMF officials post those negotiations recently held between IMF mission and Pakistani authorities regarding a longer, larger EFF. How
I
hopeful are
think
you?
we are very hopeful because the way government is treating this entire budget, we are definitely will be able to get extended facility from the IMF, and there is no doubt on it. But to me, rather than focusing on the tax, we have to focus on the expenditure side. That is missing in the entire discussion.
So when this Pakistan Economic Survey says that expenditure has been under pressure, what does that mean to you? I mean, expenditure remained under pressure due to higher markup payments.
Yeah, of course, you are like the discount rate is 22% and you are paying a lot of money as a interest to the bank. So this is the main chunk, like around 60 to 70% of your revenues goes to that head. So that's why they are under pressure. So this reduction in the policy rate would help to some saving from that,
Right.
and as well. And also, if we are really willing to reduce the expenditure, there are a lot of avenues to reduce the expenditure.
Right, Mr. Abdul, do you
Yes,
want?
I do agree, because administrative cost is very heavy upon this government. And if you continue to increase administrative costs, your resource which is meant for the creation of the asset would be diverted towards this non-productive sector,
Yeah.
which will not pay you anything, and it will simply pile up liability. So this has to be cut down. And the best way to simplification of procedures, short and downsizing and right sizing of the public sector organization. That's again very important.
Right,
Yeah,
Mr.
my last suggestion is if government can abolish all the restriction in terms of starting a business, in terms of getting electricity connection, I am very hopeful the next year growth would be more than 7%.
Mr. Abdul, Dr. Nasir Iqbal, Head Macro Policy, Lab Pakistan Institute of Development Economics, thank you very much for taking time out for Views on News tonight. Really appreciate that. Mr. Abdul Jaleel, Senior Economist, thank you very much for your time, also for being with us on the show tonight. Really appreciate that. With that, we come to the end of today's episode, and all eyes are set on the federal budget, which is going to be presented by the federal government tomorrow. Let's see what this particular budget contains. Till then, it's goodbye.